Before we get started, we're very fortunate tonight to be joined by our mayor and our vice mayor and our newly elected council member, Danny Hang. So I want to give the mayor and vice mayor an opportunity to say a few words of welcome.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Just wanted to stop by and say thank you all for being here on it's Monday. Monday night. This is a conversation that I'm really proud that the City of West Hollywood has had for many years. And I want to really echo and thank my colleague, Councilmember John Heilman, as well as Eugene Maysky, for making sure that we don't forget about voices from individuals from Ukraine, Russia, and making sure that we're doing all that we can to support the LGBTQ community there. This is a city that stands on the shoulders of immigrants from all communities, but I'm really thankful to everyone that is on this panel tonight for sharing your story, sharing your voice, and special thanks to my colleague for bringing this to us tonight. And I would love to introduce Vice Mayor Chelsea Byers.
Good evening. I think this Human Rights Speaker Series is so special because we really get to tap into what is happening all around the world. We know that queer people exist everywhere, regardless of whether governments are there to support them or not. And we have the responsibility here in West Hollywood to uplift those stories of queer struggle, of queer victory, and we're just so grateful for you all here tonight and you all to enjoy this panel. So thank you again, Councilmember Heilman, for bringing this to the city. We appreciate you.
So I also want to thank Joy, who's here. Thank you for all of your work in organizing not only this program, but so many programs here in the city of West Hollywood. Thank you, Joy. My name is John Heilman, Minyazavu John Heilman, and I'm a council member here in the city of West Hollywood. And tonight we are going to be talking about the status of LGBTQ people in and from the former Soviet Union. And we are very, very fortunate here tonight that we are joined by a number of great panelists. And I am going to start all the way on my right over here, if I can get my notes and find them. Thank you. Botan is, Botan Potatev, all right, is a Ukrainian-American legal professional. He is a lawyer in Ukraine, and while working there, he really focused on compliance, working with major corporations to ensure compliance with laws that are in effect for international corporations, and many corporations have their own policies. And so his understanding of LGBTQ issues is primarily from that perspective. Although he's not a member of the LGBT community in Ukraine, he has worked extensively with the LGBT community there. He has personal connections as well as a professional relationship. I'm trying to get everything in order here. Leah Serenian, is a board member of Gallus, an Armenian LGBTQ nonprofit. Leah leads the arts and cultural program called Izhanish, a book club exploring queer, feminist, and politically progressive authors in both Eastern and Western Armenia. Leah supports a number of initiatives, including group counseling for mental health support and Queer Message, an annual open-air art market. In addition to their commitment to Gallus, Leah is also a professional urban planner and is currently pursuing a PhD in population health and place at USC. During their free time, Leah loves to bike, play music, and test out different spicy noodle recipes. All right. So, and then it would be helpful if I got these in order, and I hope I have this right. Our next speaker is Jessica Alfred. Jessica was born in Chelyabinsk, where she attended school. After graduating, she enrolled in a military music school in Moscow and studied there for 2 years. Due to discrimination, she had to leave to continue her studies in college. When the war began, Jessica was strongly opposed to the militaristic sentiments in the country and was disappointed, to say the least, in Putin's regime. In 2023, she graduated from college and recognized her identity as a woman and planned to transition. However, with the introduction of new laws banning gender and document changes, she made the very difficult decision to leave Russia. Ivanka Asina Friedman was born in Ukraine and moved to Moscow at the age of 19 to pursue a career in the film industry. Although she experienced homophobia in Ukraine, it was nothing like the intensity of the homophobia she experienced in Russia. Working as an actress in Russia, she felt immense pressure to play a role, not only on the stage, but also in her personal life. Her agent demanded that she maintain a particular image, which forced her to marry a childhood friend to avoid any suspicion. Eventually, she was seen kissing her girlfriend, and that was recorded on video and sent to her agent. Because she wanted to continue her acting career, she had to act quickly. The constant need to live a double life required her to leave Russia and move to the United States. And next we have Dmitry Tur, who was born in Moscow and became active in the community from a very young age. He founded a student council and later established a successful business, but his life changed dramatically at the onset of war in Ukraine in 2022. He criticized the war, and his identity as a member of the LGBTQ plus community made him a target for harassment. He faced increasing pressure and threats, so Dmitry, along with his husband, emigrated to the United States, and during a very challenging journey through Mexico and eventually into the United States. Dmitry was one of the founders, is one of the founders of Ours in the USA, an organization providing legal, psychological, and social assistance to migrants and refugees. He actively works to defend the rights of LGBTQ plus individuals, including those in immigration detention centers, and he has also organized the community's participation in WeHo Pride. And then our good friend Eugene, who is on our Russian-speaking advisory board. He also does a great deal of work with CES, runs their tenants' rights clinic. He was born in Russia. He grew up working as a radio and TV journalist. He started hosting popular shows at the age of 8. And with time, his radio and TV shows expanded. He became a writer and producer. He has a long history of social activism and fighting for equality that made it very risky for him to continue in Russia. He was one of the creators and organizers of the first Russian Gay Pride Parade in 1999. About 10 years later, facing increasing threats and violence, he had to leave his home, his career, and his family to come to Los Angeles to live freely. And now he's, as I said, he's part of our Russian-speaking advisory board. He is also a huge part of the Imperial Court of Los Angeles and Hollywood. And finally, Tess Feldman is an attorney at the Los Angeles LGBT Center, where she represents immigrants and asylum seekers. She is also now an adjunct associate professor of law at Southwestern Law School. She's an instructor organizing and running the Asylum Law Clinic, which is designed to train the next generation of lawyers to dismantle all of the barriers that exist to those seeking asylum. Please join me. I know that was a very long introduction, but please join me in welcoming our incredible panelists tonight. And I have a series of questions that I'm going to ask, and I hope everyone will keep their remarks relatively brief because we have such a great group of people here. I would like to start, maybe I can start with you, Dmitry. Tell us a little bit about the situation in Russia and what it's like being a part of the LGBT community there. And we will have translation here, so don't worry if you do not speak Russian.
Дмитрий, расскажи нам, пожалуйста, о том, какова ситуация быть членом ЛГБТ-комьюнити в России.
Окей. Я хочу в первую очередь поблагодарить город Вест-Холливуд за то, что организовал это мероприятие, то, что у нас есть возможность рассказать о проблемах, которые существуют с нами, с представителями ЛГБТ из стран постсоветского пространства.
First, I would like to thank the city of West Hollywood for organizing this event so we can actually talk about the issues that LGBTQI members of the community from the post-Soviet territories are experiencing.
Касаемо ситуации в Российской Федерации с представителями ЛГБТ-комьюнити, на протяжении долгих лет в России это считается ненормальным, это считается нездоровым. И многие сами жители страны поддерживаются этой же позицией. Вот. Но с недавних пор государство стало активно участвовать в дискриминации, в выпуске законов, которые нарушают полностью права ЛГБТ, да и, в принципе, права человека в России. Сейчас на уровне государства в России представители ЛГБТК+ комьюнити являются больными людьми. Это является заболеванием.
So traditionally, for a long period of time, being part of the LGBT, being gay, lesbian, or trans, is considered somewhat unhealthy, or was considered for a long period of time unnatural or unhealthy. But lately, the government became a huge part of the problem because it officially started putting in place laws that started discriminating people of the LGBTQIA community by literally confirming and making them existing being illegal, just by existing as they are. So as of right now, existing as the member of LGBT community is now considered illegal, unnatural, and everything else.
Также зачастую родители представителей ЛГБТК+ комьюнити сейчас пользуются услугами, которые в России сейчас распространяются. Это лечение от ЛГБТ. Вот, оно выглядит в виде того, что людей... Это и конверсивная терапия, это и когда людей просто закрывают в клинике и лечат.
Ну, да. Мозг вскрывают.
Conversion therapy.
Да, вот. Институт целый построили.
And lately also what became unfortunately hugely popular is a lot of parents started using what now has become hugely popular is the conversion therapy or psychiatric treatment when a person of all who is the part of LG community is just being put mandatory into facility where they are being treated forcefully for their condition. So this unfortunately became a popular service also. And there was, Ivanka just added that there was a movement by the government to actually create a specific institute that is working on that sort of therapy.
Ivanka was jumping in, so I want to give her an opportunity to share a little bit about her perspective on what's happening and what it was like being, and you had the experience of being both in Ukraine and then later in Russia.
Ты хотел поделиться чем-то со своей точки зрения, также ты хотел рассказать о том, какой у тебя опыт был и в России, и в Украине.
Здравствуйте всем, рада здесь находиться сегодня. И я бы хотела, наверное, сказать, что в Украине я не так сильно с этим столкнулась, потому что в раннем возрасте уехала в Россию, но тем не менее, начиная, наверное, с малого возраста, когда я поняла, что мне нравятся девушки, и мне уже тогда было понятно, что это якобы ненормально в принципе в нашей жизни это. И, собственно, я об этом просто умалчивала, никому не говорила, это была моя маленькая тайна.
Hi everyone, I'm really glad to be here. And in Ukraine, when I was living there, I didn't come across such a hardship when it comes to homophobia or something like that, because probably I was too young at the time, and maybe when I moved to Russia, I actually got face to face with such a strong expression of homophobia, because I right away realized that it was really bad to like girls when I realized that I like girls. It was such strongly expressed to me that it was really bad, and I basically was face to face with an issue of homophobia right away.
Когда я переехала в Россию, мои родители знали, что мне нравятся девушки и мальчики, и говорилось это так, что когда ты вырастешь, ты будешь нормальной. Переехав с таким убеждением, что я буду нормальной в Россию, я не понимала, кто я, что я, как мне... Я не понимала, кто я, что я, как мне нужно дальше двигаться. Когда я начала актерскую деятельность, мне агенты напрямую сказали, как мне нужно выглядеть и что я должна делать, потому что именно это востребовано сейчас.
So when I was moving to Russia, my parents knew that I like girls. I also liked boys, so they told me, when you grow up, you'll be normal. So when I moved to Russia, I wanted to pursue acting, and my agents right away told me how I should look, what I should behave like, and how I should actually act, not to draw any suspicions. So Что была последняя часть? Okay. So that was kind of like given to me as how, like an example how I should behave, what I should do.
Что я должна делать, да, как должна
Yeah,
выглядеть.
so what I should do to not draw any suspicions of what I like in real life.
Oh, then you've had the opportunity to work with international corporations, and you were not too long ago in Ukraine. Tell us a little bit about how the war has impacted the LGBT community. Obviously, it's impacted everyone there, but is there anything special that about the LGBT community that has made the war especially difficult?
So the companies I used to work for were international. A lot of the mother companies were traded on the stock market, on New York Stock Exchange, one of them. And as such, they felt under the American jurisdiction, like of the relevant laws, and also we followed several British relevant laws. As such, we would usually have what you would describe as a code of corporate ethics. And those codes were usually modeled under the same exact codes as you would have in an American corporation. And it would usually include a pretty extensive section on non-discrimination, whether it came to gender identity, your sexual orientation, or any of those characteristics. This is still the case after the war because most of those companies haven't really closed shop. They're still in Ukraine, and in terms of their commitment to international standards and corporate social responsibility, not much has changed. However, the war has obviously introduced its own challenges. So, for example, first challenge I would say is displacement. And displacement is also very sensitive, I would like to say, for LGBTQI persons, because there is a big difference in terms of where you end up. If you end up in a relatively large city such as Kiev, Ukraine, or Lviv, there is a local community, usually, that you can refer to for support, and you will not exactly surprise people by the fact that you exist as LGBTQI person. But if you end up being in a rural area, well, your mileage, as they say, may vary because there is a distribution in terms of superstition. There is a difference between a major urban center and a more rural area. Also, the availability of places to stay for displaced persons, and a lot of the persons were not displaced into Ukraine, but were displaced into Russia, which brings with it the same sort of challenges as two previous speakers have told about. Another set of challenges is the availability of drugs. In the beginning of the war, it was pretty challenging to find drugs for chemotherapy, and it was even more challenging to find drugs used in gender-affirming therapy. So for trans people, that also created another set of challenges. Now, another thing, it's a thing that all men in Ukraine deal with, but it's the draft. And until summer 2023, homosexuality was not considered by law, but by a regulation, a mental illness that prevented you from serving. But in summer 2023, the regulation was changed, and now homosexuals can also and will be drafted, and they will serve. Of course, there are some LGBTQI volunteers in the army, but not all people end up in the army voluntarily. And I guess that is another issue introduced by the war. However, progress is also still being made because at the same time, a bill was introduced into the country's parliament that would actually allow for civil partnership between same-sex couples. However, it did not go forward with the justification that at the time, it's not the most pressing issue on the agenda.
And what you mentioned about displaced people, we see that displacement for war, for climate change, for anything, it has an adverse impact, a special adverse impact on the LGBTQ plus people. They may not be able to go back home. We may not be able to shelter with relatives because of their hostility. We may, as you said, we may lose access to medication that we need. So it is a major challenge all across the world. Let's go back to Jessica and have her explain a little bit about her experience and the special problems of the trans community in Russia.
Окей. I'm sorry. Насчет таблеток и драгс. Мне кажется, когда объявили, да, этот закон, это было все официально, но, насколько я знаю сейчас, что это как бы, да, можно достать. Это нелегально, все так же, но достать это можно. Другой момент, что ты, когда меняешь свою внешность, и когда ты становишься более... когда твоя внешность изменяется, ты не можешь сменить документы официально. Это это перечеркивает все вообще, конечно. Потому что в моем случае у меня... Переводишь?
So, as far as I heard, you can still get some of the medications that you need for transitioning, but the medication would be on the black market or it would be really hard to get. The main issue would be changing your gender marker on all of the documents. That would be the main issue, because when you're trying to change your look, when you're trying to transition, you also want to change the gender marker on your documents. And over there, it would be the main challenge, the main issue, because it's forbidden.
Да, в любом случае, конечно, это приходилось бы делать все нелегально, и в любом случае это, конечно, очень плохо сказывалось на общей обстановке.
So that would have to be done illegally, and that would definitely create a very drastic change of the atmosphere of the whole process, and that would be really bad for the whole process.
In the United States, the transgender community is facing increased attacks, and we saw it during the election, the politicization of gender-affirming care, and certainly violence against the transgender community. I would imagine the same sort of thing is happening in Russia as well.
В США трансгендерная комьюнити сталкивается сейчас с тем, что идет политизация этого вопроса во время выборов, в особенности. Произошла очень сильная политизация этого вопроса. Также очень много происходит атак на людей, на персон, которые трансгендерные персоны. Происходит очень много вопросов, когда политические атаки и просто атаки на людей, нападения на людей, которые происходят. Твое впечатление, твое отношение к тому, что происходит?
Да, конечно, это не такая катастрофическая ситуация, как в России, естественно, да. Я что-то хотела сказать, но у меня вылетело из головы, когда я остановилась, поэтому извините, я уже большой. Так, наверное, что я хотела упомянуть? В моем случае, я начала говорить в моем случае, да? Так вот, да, произошло так, что я осознала себя как трансгендерная девушка за месяц до того, как объявили этот закон. Да, и, к сожалению, нельзя было пройти ни комиссию официальную, ни сменить никакой гендер в паспорте. Все это, конечно, намного большие проблемы, чем проблемы, наверное, здесь.
So, even though the situation here is changing for the worst, and obviously there are issues here, it's not as catastrophic as it is in Russia. And for me personally, I knew that I was a transgender woman before the law was passed over there. So at the time, I couldn't pass the commission to actually go through the change anymore. So that made it very difficult, that made it very problematic for me.
Поэтому в любом случае, конечно, LGBTQ комьюнити нуждается как минимум в поддержке, да, в какой-то, которой не было у нас в стране. И, в принципе, мы получаем, наверное, такую поддержку, я бы сказала.
And this is why LGBT community needs support and needs help. Over here, at least we can get this support and at least we can get this help over here.
Before I turn to Leah, I want to acknowledge Nadia, who is the president of GALAS, the Gay and Lesbian Armenian organization. Thank you for being here. Leah, you been listening to our panelists. Tell us a little bit about what the situation is in Armenia. And we've been talking about war, but let's not forget the war that's gone on in Armenia and the conflict with Azerbaijan, and how has that impacted the LGBTQ plus community in Armenia?
Sure. So first, in Armenia, homosexuality was decriminalized in 2003. However, there are still challenges that the community faces in Armenia. And Gallus, we are an Armenian LGBTQ nonprofit based in Los Angeles. So we hear about issues in Armenia through two different organizations. So one is Pink Armenia. They're based in Yerevan, the capital, and they do amazing work around fighting for human rights for LGBTQ community. That they provide legal services, STI and HIV prevention, sexual health promotion, and they were established in 2007. So they've been doing great work for 17 years. The second organization is Right Side NGO, which is a nonprofit that works to advance trans rights in Armenia. And Gallus was lucky enough to host them last year. Lilith Mardosian came and we held a panel interview with her. And we learned a lot about the issues there through her. And, you know, there is a lot of violence towards the community that we are still seeing today. More recently, we did see the murder of Adriana, who was a trans woman in Armenia, and she was murdered in her own apartment. There was also Kesaria Abramids, who is Georgian, and she was also murdered. So unfortunately, we still see these oppressive structures and violence. So this means that there are people who are, you know, have witnessed so much violence and risk that they are interested in leaving the country. However, there are others like Lilith from Right Side who has seen violence but is also interested in staying in her country and trying to fight for human rights there. So to address the conflict, the ethnic cleansing that happened in Artsakh, you know, in times of hardship like war, genocide, ethnic cleansing, we see a lot of internal turmoil that happens within the community, right? We see higher rates of domestic violence cases, crime rates, and so these are the type of stressors that are imposed on the LGBTQ community that perpetuates our existing marginalization. So while, you know, I'll speak for the Armenian diaspora community in Los Angeles, while we are not experiencing displacement and ethnic cleansing, we are watching it abroad, right? We're watching the events unfold, and as an Armenian community, we all understand that this is a human rights violation. However, there is this divergence that happens with more traditionally minded Armenians who see the problem through a nationalistic lens, right? And so there's this sort of existential issue that they see the conflict through, whereas for the LGBTQ Armenian community, that creates more of a divide, and sometimes we feel more ostracized, which then results in queer and trans Armenians feeling disappointed and discouraged. There's lack of support, and sometimes we're not seen as Armenian because of our identities, right? So it's really, that could be discouraging, and it causes some Armenians to not show solidarity, but there's also the other side of the coin where, for example, Gallus is striving to create these safe spaces for community members to bring visibility and representation to the community.
Well, I'm going to get to Tess in 1 second because I want us to shift to what's happening here and how we can help the community here. We've been talking about LGBT rights in the countries of the former Soviet Union. And we have a map here, so you can see there are actually 15 countries that were part of the Soviet Union. And then there were other countries that were effectively under the influence of Russia when the Iron Curtain existed. And these are the countries that we're talking about. Obviously, we don't have the opportunity to have speakers from all of those countries. And we've been talking about all of the problems that exist, particularly Russia, Ukraine, Armenia, but there has been progress in some of the former Soviet countries. Estonia recently passed same-sex marriage. The president of Latvia is an openly gay man. Lithuania is now under an order to allow for some kind of equal treatment of same-sex couples as part of the European Union Court of Human Rights. And we haven't really talked about the stands, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, et cetera. In some of those countries, there isn't even an active LGBT organization that is known. So I tried to put together, and then obviously a lot of countries that were in the orbit of the former Soviet Union, some of which have made incredible amounts of progress, particularly Czechia, and to some degree, Poland has made some progress in recent years. But I put this together, and you can get this PowerPoint later, as we look at LGBT rights and the status of LGBT people, we have to think about a number of different things. Are organizations allowed to register? In a lot of countries, LGBT organizations are not permitted to register. They can't act, they can't operate. Is it legal to have same-sex sexual relations? Is sodomy decriminalized? It isn't in all of the former countries. Can same-sex partners get any kind of rights? Is marriage permitted? In some of the countries, it is now constitutionally banned for same-sex marriage. Marriage in the Constitution in some of the countries is limited to opposite-sex couples. Gender recognition, is that something that is permitted? Can LGBT couples adopt? And then, obviously, there's a whole host of other things that we could look at. But again, I can provide this for anyone who is interested. What is the status? And it seems to be changing on a regular basis, particularly with the pressure from Russia on Georgia. We see Georgia sort of reverting more to a Russian mindset when it comes to LGBT people. So Tess, you are our savior here. You are the one who is working at the LGBT Center, helping people who are seeking asylum in this country. Tell us a little bit about your experience working with LGBT asylum seekers and immigrants from the former Soviet Union. Are there particular challenges, or are there things that make your job somewhat easier than it is when you're working with other LGBT asylum seekers?
Thank you, John, and thank you to the community of West Hollywood for having us for this panel. It's my honor and privilege to answer this question. Sharing a little bit about the work that I do as an immigration attorney at the Los Angeles LGBT Center. We are the biggest LGBT center in the world, and within our legal services department, we have one full-time immigration attorney. That's me. And so as to the work that I do representing survivors of persecution from 60 different countries, I am often in immigration court throughout Southern California and the country, and I also appear before U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service on affirmative cases. And as to this incredible population of people from this big map that John shared, there are trends, there are really amazing stories that should give us all hope. And there are also opportunities and need for more care and support and resources, which is part of the reason we're all here sharing these stories with you this evening. An asylum seeker from many of the countries that we've learned about specifically this evening and the places that we saw on your list, John, do present different I would say, a unique population within the world of refugee and asylum seeker cases and casework. I'm going to generalize very broadly based on my experience doing this work over the last 13 years. All asylum seekers and refugees are strong, brilliant, and resilient. I think the way that the narrative frames them and the immigrant community in this country gets that wrong a lot. So I want to make sure that we start there. I think for the people who make it to US soil from the places we see on this map, this is a very often educated, resourceful, connected group of people that are different in that way from other refugees in other parts of the world, which isn't to say that people who can make it to the US have all the resources they need or deserve. But we do see people who are have better access to technology, might have financial resources to have traveled halfway around the world to get here. Certainly not easily or safely in all cases, but the fact that many people have technology access to wait in Mexico and cross our southern border through the CBP One app is very unique. Not all survivors either have access to that or can manage that. And I won't take up too much time talking about this, but I think that will be the biggest change we see in the asylum and refugee space in coming months. We know that the intentions of this next administration are to specifically dismantle the asylum process as it exists, beginning with ending the CBP One app, which many people in this community have used to get here and taught their friends and neighbors to use to get here and have better access to the work permit process and the court systems. That fundamental system will change in the coming months. And we also know that as it relates to the LGBT community specifically, the administration has a direct aim to change the concept of the LGBT community as a particular social group protected under law. What's great, to give us some hope, is that we know that the wonderful friends, neighbors, colleagues, advocates, and activists who are asylum seekers from these countries do not only have the opportunity to make their asylum claim based on particular social group identity for their LGBT community membership. These are political opinion claims, which is unique and a separate standalone basis that people can succeed on an asylum claim. So while we foresee and are preparing for big challenges ahead in this space, I think the survivors from from former Soviet Union or Russian-speaking countries have a second bite at the apple in their claims going forward. We're hopeful about that.
That's great. And Eugene, thank you for translating tonight. Tell us a little bit about your journey getting here. And you've been working with this community in a lot of different capacities. Tell us what you think are the primary needs of the immigrants and asylum seekers who are coming from the former Soviet countries.
Thank you, John, and thank you for actually creating this panel tonight. My journey was quite unique. I came here about 10 years ago with one suitcase. I had to leave everything that I worked for 40 years to build a career, home, and everything in Russia. I was very career-oriented since I was a kid, and I wanted to be TV and radio host and build radio station and TV production companies, and I did it my whole life, and then at some point, I just decided to be free, and I had to leave everything. So that's a hard choice for a person to do at 40, but that's what you're gonna do when you decide to change your life. As for the work with refugees, I can tell you the main thing that we're mostly dealing with is the housing. Everybody who comes here, we have very few places and very few resources when we can actually place refugees. There's a catch-22. Even if they get legally to cross over before the horror that is upcoming, we had CBP 1. We still have it for 2 months. So before that, people get to legally cross into United States. They wait for months for their date to cross over, and then they are released into the country with their date to appear in court, and then within 1 year they have to apply for asylum. And amazing tests, and people like her get to help them with that, immigration attorneys. But in the meantime, they have to actually stay somewhere. They have to actually have ability not to live on the street. So this is kind of like being a lot of our work and a lot of the work that I've been volunteering at the shelter here in Los Angeles, also organization that I've been a vice president of for a while, Imperial Court of Los Angeles and Hollywood. We've been supporting the shelter that provides a safe space in Tijuana before they get to legally cross over. It's called Casa de Luz. So, and here in Los Angeles, I work with our partners at APAIT. We have a shelter here in Los Angeles when they can safely stay. And I guess Dmitry can talk about it a little bit more because he stayed there at that shelter. I have worked with him there. He's actually one of our success stories from that shelter. After that, they get their own life, they get their own apartments, they get to live their own lives. But this first year, when they actually don't have anything, they need support in housing. That's the main issue that we are experiencing when we try to support refugees.
And Dmitry, you kind of started ours in the USA primarily to advocate for people, not only people coming here, but advocate for people once they're here. Tell us what you think are some of the needs that you're seeing from the community.
Дим, ты начал Hours in the USA для того, чтобы помогать людям, которые не только находятся по пути и в процессе перехода сюда, но которые уже находятся здесь. Как ты думаешь, какие основные проблемы, с которыми люди сталкиваются, когда они здесь находятся?
Основная проблема сейчас тех, кто приезжает именно в настоящее время и последние 2 года, это то, что, прибыв сюда, в Лос-Анджелес, они сталкиваются с проблемой бездомности, с проблемой отсутствия бесплатной юридической помощи для них, потому что им всем требуется подавать на убежище. Они этого не могут сделать без бесплатных юристов. Если еще где-то год назад, то есть люди приезжали с деньгами, сейчас они приезжают без денег, потому что ожидание в Мексике по CBP-1 дотягивается до года. И им приходится все деньги тратить там. И когда они выходят из детеншенов, они выходят с нулем в кармане, им некуда идти. И им, в принципе, вот мы помогаем, насколько можем сейчас своими силами.
So the main problem that people are experiencing when they're coming here as homelessness, basically, they don't have a place to stay. That's the main issue that they're dealing with. The second issue that they're dealing with is the complete lack of free legal immigration resources. Just a short break from translation, as Tess mentioned, Tess is the only person who works in her department. She is literally the person who takes on a lot of cases. And personally, I know how hard she works. So we're praying that Tess gets more support and more help. But just from the experience, she does the God's work, but we need more and more support like Tess does. And what Dmitry mentioned is that legal immigration attorneys, free support like that is the second major issue that people are experiencing. A few years ago, people were still crossing over with some little amount of money in their pocket. They had something that they could rent a room or something like that. right now, because they have to wait for 6, sometimes 7 months in Mexico for the date to legally cross over through CBP1, they don't have anything when they come here because all of their money goes to basically survive in Mexico prior to crossing over.
Сейчас у нас есть прослойка людей, которые от 25 до 60 лет, это основная масса, которые не могут воспользоваться услугами хаусинга, которые предоставляет ЛГБТ-центр Лос-Анджелеса и другие ЛГБТ-френдли шелтеры. В обычные шелтеры, которые не ЛГБТ-направленности, наши клиенты боятся идти в связи с тем, что они боятся столкнуться с большой гомофобией. Вот. И поэтому эти люди, они останутся без денег, без юридической помощи и просто не знают, куда, что им делать. Они даже не могут получить разрешение на работу без помощи юриста.
So what we're dealing with is basically people who are crossing over. They don't have a place to stay. They don't have any money. And they can't go to a regular shelter because they're afraid, the clients like that, they can't go to a regular shelter because they're scared of homophobia in those shelters. They're not LGBT-friendly shelters, so some of the clients are trans, some of the clients are gay, lesbian, and they're afraid of homophobia there. And we don't have a place for them anymore, and there's no money, no place to stay, and no legal resources. And they can't even get a job because they are legally not permitted to work yet.
Jessica, you mentioned some of the special needs that transgender individuals have when they come to this country. Tell us a little bit about your perception of what the needs are.
Я бы хотела сказать, продолжить еще немного про шелтеры. Ребята действительно очень сильно помогали людям, которые просили, в том числе и мне, с поиском каких-то мест. Они действительно хотели, наверное, и искренне это делали. И это очень здорово. И действительно действительно не хватает просто мест в моменте, когда ты приезжаешь куда-то расположиться. Это первое.
So the guys actually been trying to help a lot. Even when I came, they were trying to help me a lot to find some sort of housing. And that's a big deal because a lot of people who are crossing over, it's a huge deal to find some sort of housing, and that's the main issue.
Да, второе, это то, что действительно, мы сейчас это обсуждаем, это действительно как бы массовая проблема, нарушаются массово права ЛГБТ-комьюнити людей, и большая, огромная часть людей переезжает исключительно по этой причине.
Переезжает сюда?
Да.
Оттуда?
Из стран, да, где это запрещено.
And the second kind of like main issue is a lot of people who are crossing over from over there to over here. They're doing it specifically because all of the members of LGBT community over there, their rights are being completely stumped on over there, so they just have to cross over here. There's no other way because all of their rights are being completely destroyed over there. So they just have to come here.
Поэтому они нуждаются в защите.
And this is why they need to have a protection here.
Спасибо, Джессика. Я продолжу еще по поводу той помощи, которая здесь необходима касаемо юристов. Есть еще вторая прослойка людей, это которые находятся в данный период в детеншн-центрах. С начала июня этого года всех граждан Российской Федерации оставляют в детеншенах до момента прохождения ими всех судебных процессов по получению убежища. И для того, чтобы им судиться и качественно это делать, им также нужны адвокаты. А в детеншн-центрах они, так же, как я уже сказал, они то попадают без денег, им негде найти эти деньги, и они в итоге остаются там без лоеров, без адвокатов, и они не могут начать даже процесс получения убежища в этом случае.
So another main issue that the former Russian Federation residents are dealing with is since a certain date, какой даты?
С начала июня.
From the beginning of June of this year, all the refugees that came from Russia are being detained and not released in detention centers. None of them have been released since. So before that, they were detained for a certain period of time in detention centers. But after that, they were released with a parole or something like that. So since the beginning of June, none of them all of them were kept in detention centers and forced to go through immigration court inside detention. Because none of them have any money, they cannot hire any immigration attorneys. Within the detention, it's completely impossible without any means to actually hire an immigration attorney. They are forced to go through the immigration court within the detention system.
Leah, I wanted to get back to you. You mentioned it earlier about the experience of coming here in the community, the Armenian community that exists is very large, but not always necessarily supportive of LGBTQ people. Tell us a little bit about the experience of Armenians who are emigrating because they're LGBT.
Yeah, so there are those who are coming here, and we, through Gallus, we try to support refugees who are coming here. We had someone from Russia recently, and we try to create these safe spaces, such as programming. We have mental health services like group counseling, called Steward Sessions, and we're trying to expand that as well. We have very little funding, so we're not working with a lot of resources. We are under-resourced, and everyone who is part of Gallus, it's a 100% volunteer-run nonprofit, so we have a lot of volunteers who are committed to helping the community. And more recently, like I mentioned, there isn't support from the community when it comes to, for example, public school education. So you might have read in the news that there were alt-right protests to remove an inclusive public school education at the Glendale Unified School District. And Gallus was there. We were fighting side by side next to parents and teachers who were supportive, right? So there was this sort of loud minority, but there were also a lot of folks who were supportive. So we're grateful for that.
Great. Ivanka, what do you feel like as somebody who's come, you were in Ukraine, then in Russia, and now in the US, what do you feel are the primary needs for somebody coming to the United States to either escape the war in Ukraine or escape homophobia in Russia or anywhere?
Как ты думаешь, как человек, который жил и в Украине, и в России, и теперь живет в Соединенных Штатах Америки, для человека, который пытается либо избежать последствий войны, либо избежать гомофобии в России и оказаться в безопасности здесь, в Соединенных Штатах, каковы приоритетные нужды здесь для человека, который живет здесь, оказывается здесь? Какая помощь нужна здесь, приоритетные нужды?
Ну, я, наверное, считаю, что самая главная поддержка — это юридическая в первую очередь, потому что, не имея никаких документов, ты не можешь ни устроиться на работу, ни купить себе поесть и так далее и тому подобное. Помимо юридической, также это жилье, конечно же. Я считаю, что это первое, что необходимо в принципе.
I think the main two things, that the first thing would be attorneys' assistance, like immigration attorneys' assistance, and everything that is connected to legal immigration process, because without that you can't get a place, you can't find a job, you can't even buy something to eat. And also the second thing would be finding a place to stay, finding a place to live, like the roof over your head.
So I'm hearing a theme from everyone: immigration attorneys, legal assistance, and shelter. And that seems like a primary need. And additionally, counseling, support,
Mental
and other
health.
resources. Bowden, you came here not as a asylum seeker, you came here as a student, but you certainly know people who've come to the United States from Ukraine and other countries. What is your perception of the need?
Actually, not quite, Professor. I came here as a parolee.
Oh, I
Yeah,
didn't know that.
U for U.
Okay.
So U for U is actually a little bit more straightforward than a typical asylum application, although this is a non-immigrant status, but that's slightly besides the question. I would definitely agree that legal assistance, especially for people who are not familiar with filling out USCIS forms, would definitely be beneficial. And you know, just in general, when people come in here, they're probably pretty afraid. So shelters are doing a great thing by providing them some place to stay and maybe some gentle guidance.
Sounds good. I think we have time for some questions. Joy, do we have a mic for the audience? Or we can just steal mine. How's that? All right, well. Questions from the audience? Such a quiet group tonight. Yeah,
Did you raise your hand? No? Okay, then I'll start on this side. Did you?
Hi, thanks so much, everyone. In the U.S., we have historic movements like the Stonewall movement in New York to kind of rally around with our modern day community. And I'm curious if there's anything that the USSR had that was an equivalent of that, that modern day LGBTQ people can look to in the past.
well, Eugene, you helped start one of the first LGBT pride marches. So tell us a little bit about the movement there.
So I'm oldest out of the LGBTQ people on this panel from that territory, so I'll just answer. So I actually, when I was a kid, we still had the law that criminalizes being gay in Soviet Union. Then during the Gorbachev era, it was actually suspended or something like that. Anyways, when I was doing the first gay pride in St. Petersburg, it was what we call the political warm-up. It was during the Yeltsin era, which was a political warm-up freedom sort of like situation where for a short period of time, Russia was opening to the West. And a lot of the things that were previously, prior to that period, were completely taboo, speaking about being gay or opening up to Western world, some of the Western ideology, or even thinking about traveling on vacation to like Europe, America, anything like that, were started to become a normal thing. So the idea came from Dana International at the time won the Eurovision. She was the first trans artist to be crowned as the Eurovision winner. She won with the song Diva. She was the headliner of that concert. We did the first gay pride in St. Petersburg in the huge sports arena, which was completely sold out. And it was called Голубой Storm, which means, the word Голубой is in Russian means blue color, light blue color. It also means being gay. It's the same meaning of the word. So we called it kind of like gay storm. And we had multiple artists that were not members of the community, and some artists who were members of the community, and as the headliner, we had done international. We were supporting it with multiple different radio stations who were quite a corporate businesses and everything else. So that shows you that technically, if it's not government-pushed propaganda, Russia can be quite receptive to tolerance. It's just right now, because it's very greed-motivated or politically motivated, it's really good for current Russian regime to actually, it's very lucrative for them to blame, I guess, LGBT community for what they're doing right now over there. As a scapegoat, LGBT community is always nice. So we've never had anything specifically like Stonewall. We've had several legendary places like Stonewall in St. Petersburg and in Moscow. We had always had a club in Moscow, and lately after that it came to St. Petersburg called Central Station. We also had a legendary, somebody's smiling. Somebody knows what I'm talking about. And we also had a club in St. Petersburg called 69, believe it or not, which was quite a famous place for golden youth, and straight or gay, or for everybody who wanted to listen to cool music and hang out with cool people, but nothing like political in terms of Stonewall.
So for people who are interested, ILGA World does a lot and has a lot of resources about what's going on in different countries. Outright International also has some information on their website. So these are some of the organizations. I also listed ours in USA and Gallus, as well as the Center. Those have some additional information about the status of the movement in all of those countries. I think we had another question in the back.
Hello, good evening. My name is Matthew Villegas, and I'm a student at Pasadena City College. I'm studying global studies and soon Russian next semester. And, you know, some of the work that I've done, I'm doing ongoing research with my geography professor on the HIV/AIDS epidemic on the southern border. And so I was just wondering, from any of you all experience, how is that situation like in Russia or in the former Soviet countries? Is there like the silent epidemic? What's the access to like medications like PrEP and, you know, all these really important medications specifically for LGBTQ plus members?
Bowden, you wanted to chime in, and then we'll get...
I'll just do a quick translation for everybody.
Okay.
Он студент, его вопрос заключается в том, какова ситуация с предотвращением распространения СПИДа и... Расскажешь?
Okay. First Bowden, and then we'll come to you, Dmitry.
Yeah, so both Russia and Ukraine have universal health care. And at least Ukraine does receive those medications, and at least some quantity of them is available for pretty much anybody who needs it.
Dmitry.
Okay. В России на данный момент, во-первых, после начала войны в Украине прекратились поставки многих препаратов в Россию, и людям пришлось менять препарат, что на них плохо сказывается. Это те препараты, которые поставлялись из Европы, из-за рубежа. Также в России, я уже могу сказать, как просто житель, как я жил, нет информации, нет ресурсов, нет... Если мы возьмем США, то на каждом шагу ты можешь узнать информацию, то есть везде написано то, что как себя защитить от ВИЧ-инфекции, как проводить профилактику, как часто бесплатное тестирование везде можно сделать в любой клинике. В России этой пропаганды вообще абсолютно нет. Также в России нет бесплатного доступа к преп-терапии.
Вообще.
Ну,
Окей. С маленькими параграфами, чтобы я не терялся. С чего мы начали?
То, что в России нет...
Нет пропаганды о
нет,
том,
We have
что
nothing,
препараты-
literally.
что препараты
Small,
недоступны.
small paragraphs. Okay. So the first thing was that Dmitry said was in Russia there is no information about anything related to HIV, STI, STD testing, PrEP, or anything like that. There is no educational kind of like, I wouldn't call it propaganda, I would call it informational campaigns that would inform general population that you have to actually protect yourself, that you have to use PrEP if you are engaging in risk behavior or something like that, or that is available to you just in general, that there are certain ways that you can protect yourself, like PrEP therapy, for example, right? None of it is available. There is no information of free testing or free testing itself. So, and PrEP is also not available for free. So that creates another issue.
Также и терапия, которая назначается ВИЧ-инфицированным людям с момента начала войны в Украине, некоторые препараты прекратили поставлять, пришлось менять препараты, и в принципе с этим трудности достаточно возникают.
So
I have two more questions.
So some of the medications that people were on because of the beginning of the war in Ukraine and sanctions from Europe and something like that, they became unavailable anymore, and people had to replace their medications with either generic replacements or like medications that were made in Russia. So it would be like in Russia produced replacements. So the medications would, the change of medication would influence their health in the worst way. Like it would, the change of medication from the original good medication that were prescribed to them originally to the replacement would influence their health to the worst. And another thing is, что было последнее? Okay, so that's kind of like the situation.
Victor, and then we have one last question.
I'm going to... Здравствуйте, и очень спасибо, Councilman Heilman, for bringing all these folks together. Добрый вечер. I have a couple of quick questions about the housing, the very important priority. Leading up to this election season, we were pummeled by all these pictures, people complaining, oh, all the undocumented folks are in the hotels in New York, in Chicago, in Denver, and that. Do we here in Southern California, Los Angeles, San Diego, do we have hotels and resources and money that could help the LGBTQ community? And I'm just wondering, and other folks, I'm wondering, is there a gap there? How does New York do it? I'm hearing that we don't have much housing here. That's the first question.
You get one, Victor.
Is that
so
it?
ask the second one, and we'll try to get it answered too.
When we see all the people coming across the river, you know, the Rio Grande, and trying to get into the country, were those people all with this CPB app? And they were let in with the CPB app, and it sounds like our community is following the rules. It has to stay in Mexico. It wants to be more legalized, yet it seems like most of the people coming in are just coming in and then being released. How does that work?
Tess, you want to try that one?
Sure. Do you want to take the housing question first?
Oh, yeah. So the first part of the Добрый вечер, Victor. First part related to the housing question. We don't have a shelter in West Hollywood. We have specifically LGBT, one very small shelter where I volunteer with Dmitry State. It only can house 14 people, and that's it. We don't have anything else. Not that I know of. Specifically LGBT shelter that I work with, we have only one. I think LGBT Center has one, but I'll let Tess describe that situation. And the second part of the question would be...
Thanks. Every city that has received an influx of immigrants arriving to their borders or their ports or on buses from other states has the opportunity to find housing as a human rights issue, as a way to care for people who have constitutional rights because they're on US soil. It's up to each of those cities whether they choose to do that or not. We know there's enough housing in this wonderful big metro area in one of the biggest cities in the country. It's a matter of political will, and I just want to name that race plays a central part in how many people respond to housing for immigrants, be them undocumented or legally present in the United States. So if anyone would like to continue that conversation to the side, I'm happy to have that. And I hope that in the coming months we see LA City, now a sanctuary city, and the area respond to that from a place of safety and kindness for whoever arrives in our city, our county, or in our neighborhoods. I will also name that most undocumented immigrants arrive to the United States on airplanes. I think that's a common fallacy that they're coming to us over the river. So I just want to put that out there. The second part of that question was...
the people who we're talking to tonight and the process they're going through seems to be different from people who are crossing over the river or coming on airplanes and just overstaying.
Thank you, yes. The United States immigration system is designed to keep people out of access to lawful process. And so one very effective way that has been done was by creating an app, primarily in English, that requires internet and cell phone use to use, which means that many immigrants, many of the people who come from places that you have to arrive by airplane with identification to get to one of our borders, they are able to use that and follow the rules. But that rule is designed to keep people out. So yes, it is possible, but as our panelists outlines, as our panelists have addressed, it's very dangerous, expensive, and difficult. The data that we don't have good numbers on is who doesn't make it over, who doesn't make it from the journey of 9 different countries that I see my clients take to get to the point where they can find shelter in Mexico and wait and access an app that's very difficult, crashes almost every day, and only limits it to a handful of appointments for thousands and thousands of people. So the concept of just waiting in line or getting on the path to citizenship, our government has invested a lot in that propaganda concept for us to think that there is a lawful path to citizenship and people are just not choosing to access it, or that there is a line that people can safely wait in. In my experience as a practitioner, that's not true. And I'm not hopeful that that changes in the coming months.
And then we have one last question here, and there will be time for talking to our panelists after the program out in the lobby. Yes.
Здравствуйте, good evening, everybody of this. So I'm Armenian and I came to United States as an asylum seeker 2 years ago. I don't have a question, I'm not gonna ask a question, but I wanna answer the question regarding HIV and medication, because we heard the Russian and Ukrainian perspective, and I wanna give Armenian perspective because I'm from inside, because I just relocated here 2 years ago. And by the way, my asylum application was granted by immigration judge 2 months ago. So, regarding PrEP, situation in Armenia in this regard is quite better than in Russia and Ukraine. It's available and it's free. I was getting PrEP in Armenia like from 2021, but that's thanks to an NGO, because yeah, in Armenia we have a couple of really LGBTQ supportive NGOs that do a great job. There is an NGO called New Generation, and thanks to them, I mean, it was free for me, but I mean, it was not free completely, they were paying for me. So it's pretty possible in Armenia to get PrEP free, or if you go to that NGO, they don't even ask your ID or your real name if you want to be hidden. You can introduce yourself as you want. But the only problem is that there is only one place. It's like state-owned hospital that's called AIDS Center. You go there. My only fear was when first going there, like, how are gonna doctors behave to me, knowing, because if you are requiring a PrEP, obviously you're gay. So, but the doctors, to my surprise, who were like from Soviet Union, older Russian-speaking doctors, you know, they were quite nice to me and like showing that they don't understand anything. Like, but of course they understood everything. So that's the perspective from Armenia. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and please join me in thanking our fantastic panelists here, Tess, Eugene, Dimitri, Ivanka, Jessica, Leah, Bowden. Thank you all for sharing your stories and your perspective. And again, thank you to Joy for bringing us all together here. There will be time for questions and answers afterwards out in the lobby, but thank you all for being here. Spasiba Bolshoya. Thank you so much. Good evening. Thank you.
Pat Mayer and I are so excited. What was that? She's very excited that there were a lot of pup cups and some amazing dogs. It's a beautiful day in West Hollywood.
This is our Halloween event. We have a lot of learn who your spirit animal is, and they get a lot of swag bags. We have a lot of activities. We have a lot of sponsors just to give free things to everybody.
This was a wonderful opportunity to come out and see all the dogs in our beautiful neighborhood in West Hollywood. The costumes were amazing.
Halloween is a family-friendly and pet-friendly event, and we look forward to having you guys out here.
We're here at Plummer Park for the Halloween Carnival. We had a really good time so far. What was your favorite thing that you did today, Freddie Benny?
I like Boogie House.
And we're having a great day. Finn, what was your favorite part of the carnival?
The train.
The train. We also really liked the haunted maze. It was very spooky.
Hey, WehoTV. My name is Andrea Lujan. I'm the recreation specialist here at Plummer Park, and I'm coming to you live from the Plummer Park Pumpkin Patch here at the Youth Halloween Carnival. Events like the Youth Halloween Carnival is very important, especially for our youth, because it garners community, it helps us promote our recreation programs, and overall it just brings us all together. We're excited to share this experience with you here at the City of West Hollywood.
Hello, my name is Avery, and I dressed up as a hippie. Hi, my name is Anya, and I'm dressed up as Harley Quinn. My favorite thing at the carnival was the pumpkin decorating. I went to the carving pumpkins, and I made a cool pumpkin with a smiley face.
The costume showcase was very fun. Yeah, and we got a reward after we went.